Today we are speaking to Angela de Longchamps, and I'm so pleased to have her with us today. I recently actually signed up as a business channel and future facilitator for Inspired Leadership, and it's a product that I've totally lost my heart to. But the reason that we have this product is Angela, who actually created, designed, put it all together beautifully, and actually just gave life to this dream. And so I am so pleased to be speaking to my friend Angela today. Hi, Angela. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Innocent. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here at the Performance Cafe. It feels very grand.
Thank you so much. I hope you've at least got coffee.
Actually,
or a drink.
I had, and I thought about it, but then my lovely work partner, who's also my life partner / husband, didn't supply me with coffee. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to relook at my performance contract.
I was thinking performance contract. Yes, meeting coffee is a thing. It's a reality, especially with Zoom.
Exactly.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thanks for being here. So, Angela, I mean, you and I, our connection is through leadership. Performance Cafe, we take a look at how do we increase performance in businesses in a beautiful way that really enhances people's lives so that they perform better. I wanted to ask you, what's your definition for leadership?
So my definition is definitely that leadership exists in each one of us, and we are able to firstly lead ourselves. And when we can lead ourselves well, then we're able to lead others and influence others. So leadership isn't a position in an organization or a role that you fulfill. It's who you are and how you work with and engage and influence both yourself and those around you.
Wonderful. And you're saying everyone can do it. So are there not particular skills that we need to understand, that we need to use?
Absolutely. I think everybody can lead. We all do. To some extent, we all do. I mean, somehow we're functionally getting ourselves through our lives and making big decisions and raising families to whatever degree. So we are all leading ourselves, and we're leading our small communities, leading our relationships. So we all have these foundational skills, but in organizational context, we need to up our game because in some cases, we have positional authority over others. But we don't want to rely on a position of authority to force others to follow. Those days are old-fashioned, that kind of hierarchical leadership, army type of attitude where, you listen to me because I'm your commander. Yes, sir. That kind of world doesn't exist anymore. So we need to generate leadership qualities in ourselves and in others where people will voluntarily give of their best to you because they support you as a human being, what you stand for, how you treat others, the ethos of your company, the ethos of your team, all of those types of things. That's what makes leadership a set of behaviors that inspire others to follow you voluntarily and give their discretionary efforts to your quest, whatever that might be.
Wonderful. So I know that you're quite passionate about the work around high performers in businesses. So I come from a background, I'm only 16, but still, when I was raised in the 80s, there were children at school. My maths has never been great.
And that's you've seen, but as you graduated at the age of 8.
Yes, there we go. When I was at school, when I was at high school, when I was at university, there was this select team. They've always done well. Even at school, they fitted the mold. They got all the opportunities, and I'm not saying that in a bitter way, but they got first picks of the teams and the awards and the roles and the play and everything. What happens? Is that still a thing that we should do? And how does that fit in with everyone can be a leader?
So the research shows us that 25% of leadership characteristics are inherent. 75% can be learned. So if you are a 5-year-old who leads the playground, who is the first pick, who has the bright ideas and is a natural leader, well, you were lucky. You got the 25%. And I think a fair amount of that comes from your home and the way you're raised and your opportunities that you're exposed to. those types of things, I absolutely think that that's a big part of it. But it means that the 75% can be learned. And we know, you and I both know very well, that things like emotional intelligence are things you can learn. So when we understand that that exists in the world and what we can do to build a higher level of, let's say, social competence, when you understand, oh, what can I look for? How can I get better at this? You start to develop the foundations of leadership. But without the knowledge, it's not coming naturally to you. It's a bit like, I mean, it's parallel to musical ability. There are some amazing people out there who can maybe learn a bit about music and then they sit down and they play by ear. And you want to go, what? How's that possible? You can just like play by ear? Well, lucky you. And then the rest of us who don't have the ear have to study at length and practice and practice and practice. Will we ever be as good as somebody who's just naturally got an ear for music? Possibly not. But will we be competent? Absolutely. So like many things, you can develop it, but it's not to say that there isn't already a foundation in place for some.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing that you raise here, because I think so long our society has sort of taken the 25%, those were the 25% leadership, and boosted them. And everyone else was simply just not good enough. Do you think that there's one type of leader, or do you think there's a variety and we must go and pluck from the garden of variety?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely think that there's a variety of ways that we can lead and influence others, styles and techniques that fit more to one personality type to another, your strengths versus somebody else's. A great example is I've got a guy who I'm working with he's a subject matter expert. I mean, he's a really good technical guy and he runs his business well, but he's the opposite of a charismatic leader. So to try and get him to inspire his team and be charismatic and outspoken and pull them together towards a common purpose with great energy, this is not going to be him. It's not him. It's just his style is far more, deep and detailed and, kind of knowledge-based. So his team respects him because they respect the fact that he knows what he's doing. And that's how he manages to lead his team. So I think there definitely are different strokes for different folks, but at the heart of it, I think there are some core elements. So you might be able to be an effective leader without these, but I doubt it. You're probably leveraging your positional authority if you don't have things like higher levels of self-control. The self-control makes for a much better leader than somebody who is erratic, all over the place, shouting and screaming and having emotional outbursts, or isn't able to listen. So I think at the heart of great leadership are people who are able to control themselves first, which is, of course, self-control.
Yeah. Emotional intelligence, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the heart of emotional intelligence. But it's that kind of thing that sits there. Things like personal integrity. Like, I say what I'm going to do and then I do it. That integrity is something that sits right at the heart of really good leaders. And I'm not saying that people who maybe jump onto a pedestal through various nefarious means, who we have seen plenty of in the recent history, they don't necessarily embody that self-control, that integrity, but you can just cast your eyes back and see people who've shaped history. They have a lot more of that in them than what we might have seen more recently.
I hear you. Okay. What I was also hearing from you is not only is there not just one form of leadership, but that people need different forms of leadership. So, for example, you put it so beautifully that the person you were referring to, his team respects him as a leader because that's what they need in a leader. Maybe the charismatic leader would be, not for them. They appreciate this person's sort of data-driven, information-driven sort of personality. What do you say to that?
I think another big part about authentic leaders is they know what's needed at the time and whether they're able to give it. I've got a great example of actually pastoring at a church that I went to. still go to actually, where the senior pastor took the church to a point and then with the great wisdom of leadership realized he could take it no further, but had grown a successor. And he stepped aside to let the successor take over, who then had the skill sets and the vision and the greater degree of being able to see the future, strategic insight. The stuff that the guy number one was wonderful, make no mistake, but a different time period. And I've seen that in organizations as well, but particularly the entrepreneurs that then ended up with a fairly significant business and then tried to go like really big, or it was a step change. And then you have to take a hard look at the mirror and go, I'm not it anymore. I need to make way for someone who can grow the business or put more formal structures in place or be more deliberate in its culture setting. You know, I'm not that guy. I'm not that girl. Let me step aside and make space for others. The other part of that one is to be able to adjust your leadership style based on what the situation requires of you. And that's another part of self-control because you're able to adapt your approach and your behaviors. I'm not absolutely saying that you have to change your personality. It's adapting your behavior to the environment you find yourself in. So that's a big part of effective leadership is being able to select how you show up and which aspects of yourself you let rise in that moment.
So, Angela, what I hear you saying, and it's something I really wanted us to pick up on in any way, is, well, not what you're saying. The connection my mind is making is that we were taught you treat everyone exactly the same. Consistency and fairness is key. I'm hearing you saying maybe not so much.
Not so much. In fact, I'm glad that you raised that one up because actually within Inspired Leadership as a program and how we move through the journey with managers, we specifically spend in the second module a large amount of time on communication. And this is where light bulbs go on for managers when we start to unpack different ways to communicate depending on who the person is that you're communicating to. And you adapt your style for that person. Because at the end of the day, as a communicator, as a manager, your job is not to say the message or deliver the message. Your job is to make sure that the message is understood and acted upon. That's totally different things. It's easy just to blast an email and say, tick, I've done it. But it's very different to have the button pushed, the process followed, the project kicked off. The result of the communication needs to take place. So we see this in our manager to leader journey where managers suddenly, I can't tell you, this happens every single time, where they suddenly go, you mean I must treat people differently? Yeah, that's it. That's it. Adapt your style to the person and to that person where they're at in their development cycle, in their functional, the skill set that they're in, maybe their performance level. You have to adapt your style. It's absolutely not a one-size-fits-all approach. I mean, it's like child raising. Not that it's the same, but I mean, you don't just have one parental style and go, well, all 7 children will be treated exactly the same, regardless of age and regardless of ability and regardless of interest. We'll just treat them all the same.
Yes. Nice and fair. Entirely useless, but very fair.
Actually, fairness is a problem.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right? Hugely unfair. Okay, so thanks for that. So I wanted to take a step back, sorry, to something you actually said earlier. There's so much value in what you're saying. I've got too many questions going through my head right now. So you spoke about in a church setting. Now, I mean, we don't have churches that have got hundreds of thousands of people in them, I think, necessarily. And yet you were hinting at succession planning, where a leader had thought, who's going to step up after me? And, that's something we sort of think of in corporate and large business. How important is succession planning for a small company? Maybe I've got 200, 300 employees, maybe even less. How important and when does it become important and why is it important?
I think succession planning is important regardless of where you are in the organization. If at any point you see yourself doing something different, I mean, you are actually, as an entrepreneur or as a pastor or as anything, you're stuck. You are stuck without a successor. Whether you're a first-line manager or you're running a big business, you don't get to go and grow unless you've got somebody to fill behind you and take over. I mean, it's kind of an obvious choice, isn't it? Create the space for yourself to move by making it very obvious that someone's going to step in behind you and continue the quest. So I don't think there's any dependency on the size of the organization. I think it's all about whether you see yourself moving to anything else. And it might be the case of moving aside. I don't really want to be running this multinational company. That's not my dream. But I think the company, or I think the idea, or I think this business could be a big multinational. It's not for me. So I will raise somebody or start spotting people around who can move into that space, and I will move sideways. And I do think that that's a mark of a really true leader. A true leader is somebody who's not married to the position. They're more committed to the idea, and that it'll carry on without them. Because leadership, great movements need to be independent of the person that is starting the movement.
I love that thought. And what I really love about it is that typical, I suppose, of someone who's been in learning and development for so long, you don't see it as, oh, I can't anymore, therefore I must hand down. It's, well, I might be on the pinnacle of my success. How do I become more successful? I'm not quite sure. Yes, and so how do I carry on growing? And so I let someone else take it. I really like that. A lot of people feel like, well, if I let go of this little baby, look, I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I often think that way as well. It's like, it's my little baby. I don't want to let go of it. It's very difficult. But how do leaders go about identifying those performers in their business that they can identify in succession planning?
Well, we've just kicked off another emerging leader program at a client. And in the process of identifying who the emerging leaders are, in Inspired Leadership, we use a completely different approach, and we actually let them self-commit. They have to put their own hand up. And I think that's one of the marks of emerging leaders, is people who put their hand up and go, I'm ready to invest in my own skills development and take it seriously. So we just reverse think this whole thing. I'm strongly against the I select you, and I select you, and I select you. I don't believe that is the way to get the best talent, and also to increase the diversity of our talent pipeline. If we keep picking people, we need to also allow them to pick themselves. Because if they can pick themselves and put their own hand up to go, yes, I'm ready, that's a mark of leadership. It's initiative. There's a certain element of confidence there, which is hard. It's very hard to build confidence unless there's at least a granule there to build on. So it's initiative. It's confidence. It's also that kind of self-belief of I'm worth developing. I'm worthy of more than where I am now. So those are good marks of future talent, and that particularly. What I like to look at is the heart of the volunteer, somebody who's taking on more than just the job, somebody who looks around and going, I think that needs to be fixed. I'm going to try and fix it. Or that's an interesting little side project that somebody's busy with. Let me go and join them and see if I can help. So that attitude at the ground level is a great indicator of foundational leadership, that you spot those people and then invest in them and see how far they go.
Wonderful. I think that's such an innovative idea, because I personally have had so many situations where I go and say, let's do leadership development with a company. They go, oh, well, we paid 100,000 Rand last year for one person and they've dropped out after month 3, and then we'd already paid. And oh, that burns. That burns. That person will never probably ever get opportunity again. So I think that kind of commitment is great for the company and the client, the participant, to validate interest and follow through.
I think, well, yes, I completely agree, but it also adds to the, I don't know what you were like, Anna, but you mentioned that kind of school thing where we would all sit at the side of the soccer field or the netball field and wait to be picked.
Yes.
Remember that? You
Yes.
line up and you get picked for the team, and you just were going, please, Lord, let me not be the last one picked. And
Yes.
that's kind of become the way that we do stuff.
Yes.
HR or talent or senior managers or some executive sits with a list of staff and go, well, I like that one, and we'll pick that one. We're totally going to invest in that one. They literally are picking people off a list like we're sitting on the sidelines. And yet, if you actually think about it, particularly with the emphasis on diversifying your talent pipeline, you need people who don't fit the mold that you think is leadership. Or you don't think is talent, because your lens is characterized and developed by your own experience and your own blind spots. So let them pick themselves, and that will help to create this talent pipeline that is very different from what the top people are thinking it should be.